The Prophet Muhammad is known to all Arabs. His story is quite interesting. I will tell you about the Prophet Muhammad, his message, the faith, and unity. Muhammad was born around 570 AD in the Arabian Peninsula, where tribes were constantly at war. When Muhammad was young, he was sent off to live with his uncle. At the age of 6, both of Muhammad's parents had died. In his uncle's clan, the Bedouin, they would get together like all other Arabs across the Arabian Peninsula and tell stories that were told and retold for generations. Because of this, some of the most important people in the tribe were poets, because they linked the tribe to their ancestors. Poets bind the Bedouin together. Muhammad was taught hunting skills by his uncle. They would raid and defend grazing lands, trade routes, and most importantly, wells. Water was very precious to them. Each clan had its separate gods and totems such as water, wind, fire, and night that were kept in a shrine in Mecca made of wood, stone, and cloth called the Kaaba, which in Arabic means cube. It was said that the Hebrew patriarch Abraham built the Kaaba centuries ago, and that a sacred black stone that is said to have fell from the sky was held within. Once, Muhammad had a vision while meditating up in the mountains near Mecca that is talked about throughout Arab religion even today. In Mecca, you would find rare spices, silk from China, and much more. The local religion there was mixed quite a bit. Mecca was the center of a large trade route, which connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean, and linking the Byzantium Empire and Persia to India and China. Muhammad became a merchant and was a good one. At the age of 25, while leading his caravan, his clan spotted the shipment's owner, a widow named Khadijah, who soon gave a proposal to Muhammad and they got married. Muhammad was a very intelligent and open-minded man and could help people with their problems. Once, when the Kaaba fell into disrepair, the clan chief wondered who would have the honor of putting the stone back where it belongs. Before violence broke out, Muhammad proposed an idea to the clan. With united effort, the four leaders shared the weight. In gratitude, the leaders invited Muhammad to put the stone where it belonged. He was from there on known as the Trusted One. One time, Muhammad had a vision while meditating up in the mountains near Mecca that is talked about throughout Arab religion even today. While Muhammad was up in the mountains, he saw a vision of an angel in the form of a man named Gabriel, instructing him to recite in the name of God the Almighty. Muhammad would say to people that there is no God but Allah. One God meant one people, so all of the tribes formed as one. Muhammad would speak to the community. Some people called him a poet. There is a Quranic serum saying, Muhammad is not a poet. Poets speak through desire. Muhammad does not speak through desire. He speaks through God. Muhammad's followers began to grow, and those that followed Muhammad called themselves Muslims, those who surrender to God. They set out to preserve the message that Muhammad had brought. This was the beginning of the Quran. They copied it down so the message could not be corrupted. The Quran is a revelation of spiritual teaching. It was revealed and remains in Arabic. There were some paintings of Muhammad, but were not to be worshipped. The tribe chiefs decided that Muhammad and his message must be removed forever. The tribe chiefs decided to assassinate Muhammad, and they asked his uncle to put down his tribe's defense, so the path to assassinate Muhammad was clear. He refused. Muhammad's followers were driven away from the markets and starved, and those without tribe protection were tortured and killed. In 619 AD, Muhammad's wife died, and his uncle died as well. This was the opportunity Muhammad's enemies were waiting for. The people of an oasis city named Yakrid invited Muhammad for his peacemaking skills. Muhammad agreed to travel to Yakrid in exchange for safe protection and refuge for his tribe's people. They began a new community, a new tribe, and for the first time they were not bound by blood but by faith. Their journey, known as the Hijra, in 622 AD in the Christian calendar, marks the Muslim year 1. Muhammad's goal on the people of Yakhrib was the same goal as his major goal, to bring unity and peace with his message. He would bring peace between tribes that were intractable. Yakhrib would be known as the city of the Prophet, Medina. Muhammad wanted to bring all the groups in Medina together to form a sort of community of believers that in a way would bring them together in a kind of harmony. At one point, the young Muslim community was at the edge of annihilation. For 3 years, the Muslim army held out against staggering odds. But even as the Muslims were praying towards Mecca, their enemies there were rallying in force. Their goal was to wipe out the Muslims. Muhammad's people began to gather weapons. Though the Muslims prepared their arms as best as they could, they were outnumbered and outmatched. They only mustered a force of 313 people, mostly old men and boys, with few weapons. While on the other side, the Meccans mustered a force of strong, well-armed force of 1,000 men strong. For years, Muhammad had tried to bring Islam to the people of Mecca peacefully, and now it was time to fight. The Muslims fought their own tribes, brother fighting brother, and son against father. Muhammad's troops fought hard. There were 3 bloody battles. As the word of the war spread, other Bedouin tribes saw God's hand in Muhammad's victories. One by one, the people of the desert joined Muhammad's struggles. The Muslim army grew and tide began to turn. The Muslim forces advanced to the outskirts of Mecca. It was a furious siege that lasted nearly a month, until the city fell into the hands of Muhammad. In 630 AD, the terrified people of Mecca braced for the onslaught. Muhammad's army was returning home now, 10,000 strong. The vanquished knew the terrible fate that awaited them. A worldwide community of faith had begun. While the community in Medina grew, a life of simple devotion and ritual began. A freed Abyssinian slave named Bilal was the first to call believers to prayer at Muhammad's house. The call to prayer, the first Islamic pillar, which in the affirmation of God's unity, La ilaha illa Allah, to constantly remind themselves of the unity of God and the unity of what we should focus on in life. The call of prayer brought the people to come in prayer with the caller, and that all people praying would face toward Mecca, and more specifically towards the Kaaba. It's said that when Muhammad was in Medina, he received a revelation instructing those in prayer to face in the direction of the Kaaba in Mecca. Though filled with idols, it was still the shrine of Abraham, the first believer in the one true God. The Meccans could expect a big revenge. The men would be killed, and the women and children would be sold into slavery. There is little pity for the loser of a tribal war. But Muhammad had a surprise for the city. When he entered the city, he did not have a bloody revenge, but embraced the very Meccans who fought him for 3 years and almost annihilated him. The people of Mecca were surprised, but not all of the people escaped the wrath of Muhammad. His troops rushed straight to the Kaaba after their victory. 7 times they circled the Kaaba. But it was not the people Muhammad had come to destroy. He came for their gods. He raised his staff, and the tribal gods of his ancestors crumbled to dust. When Muhammad destroyed the idols, he was breaking apart the tribal system. This was shocking the people. The destruction of the idols created a new beginning. Doing so created a powerful force. Mecca was just the beginning. One by one, the tribes were summoned under the banner of Islam. The Muslims turned to the north, swept into what is now Lebanon and Syria, then turned to Egypt and North Africa. After that, they moved to the Mediterranean. Soon, they took over Iran and 2/3 of the Christian Byzantine Empire. Now, their empire was larger than Rome's. Their empire stretched from Morocco to where the Indian border is today. Nobody was to convert or die. In fact, the Muslims let the Jews and Christians maintain their religious laws. As they swept through Syria, the Muslims held their Friday prayers in the Church of St. John the Baptist in Damascus, allowing its Christian congregation to continue its services on Sunday. Side by side, the two religions share the same building and piece. As the Muslim community grew, they bought the church and built a huge mosque on the site. They decorated the mosque with golden mosaics. The Great Mosque of Damascus would be the great model for the other mosques to come, all across the world. The Muslims found a way to gather fresh water with a filter. The fresh water would then be sent through pipes through the city. This was hundreds of years before anyone had even thought of doing something like this. The Muslims thought of an irrigation system, and soon agriculture flourished. The Muslims saved their most monumental feat for the holy city of Jerusalem. There they constructed the Dome of the Rock. Like Mecca and the Kaaba, this was also a holy site, referring back to Abraham. For the rock within is to be the place he nearly sacrificed his son. In just 100 years, Muhammad's empire was greater than Rome's, and they had built a religion that flourished around the world. But Muhammad never lived to see it. In the 11th year of the Islamic calendar, 632 AD, 2 years after the taking of Mecca, Muhammad died. Medina fell into despair. The town was in sorrow and ceremony. Muhammad had said that he wanted a simple grave with no mark and nothing else, for that would interfere with their worship to God. The people only saw God through Muhammad, and now that the prophet was gone, then maybe God was too. The people wondered how they would go about choosing a new leader. According to the Shiites, a faction of the Shia of Ali, Muhammad had chosen his son-in-law, Ali, to be his successor. The Sunni opinion, or the majority opinion, was that Muhammad had not chosen a successor, but had said to choose one of the elders. Eventually, the successor became Abu Bakr, who told the people, if you worship Muhammad, know that he is dead. If you worship God, know that he lives forever. Unlike the Christians, the Muslim thinkers thought of no contradiction between their religion and rulers governing the natural world, so they embraced Aristotle and Plato, which the Christians called phony. From the Hindus came mathematical concepts that we use today. It was scholars from the House of Wisdoms that created the Arab numerals. The Renaissance had its beginnings in Baghdad, and soon the Muslims began to challenge the wisdom. 200 years after Muhammad's death, the Muslim faith reached out and changed 3 different continents. It took nearly a year to reach from their lands of the border of India to Spain. The center of this empire was a city named Baghdad. It was a city of wealth, but it was mainly important for its scholars, making Baghdad the center of learning for the Islamic community. The best scholars were accepted into Baghdad's center of wisdom, the House of Wisdom. Scholars from all over the empire would come together in Baghdad, even Christians and Jews. Soon, they were fighting to be the elite in their job. Scholars were sent through the empire to search for as many ancient texts as possible. This was the first international scientific search in history. science like algebra, engineering, and astronomy were all based from Muslim scientists. They also thrived in medicine. The Muslims had a theory that disease was given by tiny airborne molecules like germs. Their theory of anatomy was so complicated that they remained in use to Muslim and European physicians for 600 years. The first pillar of Islam, Shahada, literally meaning bearing witness, the affirmation in Allah and Muhammad as his prophet. The second pillar is Salat, group prayer or worship. Group prayer is more blessed than individual prayer. Muhammad suggested Friday as the day that Muslims would gather to pray. The third pillar, Zakat, means purification, but has evolved to designate tithing and almsgiving. The fourth pillar is Swam, the fast during the month of Ramadan, the 9th month of the Muslim calendar. The fifth pillar, the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, a sacred duty and transcendent opportunity.